How's the Detroit Sports Podcast going?
This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Hey everybody, this is Freddie Cohen of ESPN Radio. When I'm not talking about breaking news or breaking news on ESPN Radio, I'm always a fan and listen to the Detroit Sports Podcast, and so should you.
You guys keep up the good work, man. Podcasts are the way of the future.
Thank you for downloading the latest edition of DocNJock. I am the Doc, John McEnroe, joining me, my cousin, Adam, the Jock Strozinski, ready to kick off episode 307. What's up, cuz? What's going down this fine day?
307 of these. That's a lot, man.
I was talking to somebody just the other day, and I was saying, man, we've been doing this 6 years. People that messaged me back in 2013 that were young and writing and things like that are now finishing up college looking for their start. And I'm like, really? This guy wrote for us. He wrote a blog for us back in the day. And I'm like, wow, they're in college doing their thing. We've been doing this a long time, basically for the better part of my 30s. I've done this podcast, and I've enjoyed it. Episode 307 kicking off. We're still talking about issues with the Lions.
For my entire 30s.
Yeah.
We've done this.
Your entire 30s.
Wow.
Now you're nuts. 36.
I'm old.
You're old, man.
Hey, yesterday at the gym, I was talking to this girl, and she thought I was 22. I totally think she was lying to me, but she's like, I thought you were a young pup. And I was like, this young pup still got teeth, you know? But yeah, she thought I was like 22. I was like, get the hell out of here. It's crazy. I think she wanted it. I'm not sure. I'm waiting to find out. I'll find out next week.
Does that give you an ego boost when something like that happens?
All day. Dude, look, if I didn't have a leash around me, I would be marking all of my territory.
Absolutely.
Yes, all of them would just be stamped. Nothing feels better. To know you still got it, like, at this old, decrepit age. Like, I just told you, I sat down, I was like, man, my back really hurts today. Feet hurt. Everything hurts. But still, the ladies want it. Love it. Love it.
Now
my wife's lucky. She doesn't even realize how lucky she is. That's some hoe-ass shit.
Now, your boy, it's funny because sometimes you do wonder what people think about you, and it came into fruition last week where I saw an article on Facebook where someone did a study and said, your friends really don't even like you most of the time, and then a trainer, a world-class boxing trainer, comes in, he's sitting next to Vito, and Vito's like sitting there flexing and looking all strong, and he starts making comments, and he's like, Vito.
How big are Vito's biceps?
They're huge.
Are they?
And I'm like, okay, and he sits down, and he goes, yeah, Vito, you look like a fighter, and John, I'm sitting there kind of just, going through some things, reading up on and researching and stuff like that. He's like, John, you look like a guy that's real laid back and you would tap out in training. Meanwhile, I'm thinking, oh, okay, yeah, I do give off a kind of a passive vibe, but I'm kind of athletic a little bit. I could go and work out. That's why
athletic a little bit.
And that's why I'm so disappointed, because I told Vito, tell him, bring some gloves and bring the sparring mitts. I want to hit him and show him that I'm a little bit athletic. And people are surprised that
I want to hit him.
I wanted to hit the sparring gloves.
This is a boxer. I want to hit him.
I wanted to get some aggression out because people see me, this bald, kind of pudgy guy, and they probably think I got 2 left feet, but I'm semi-athletic. I'm not great at anything.
I mean, you were a decent high school tennis player, right?
Yeah, like I said, I'm a guy that you put me in any situation. I can hit a baseball. I can hit a golf shot 200 yards. Now, is it going to be straight? Probably not. It's going to curve left to right, right to left. Might, have to yell for every couple times. But I can get around. I can play cards. I'm multifaceted. I think I'm a guy's guy. But everyone looks at me, and I like that, actually. I kind of like it when people judge me. That whole age-old adage of don't judge a book by its cover. And people are like, wow, this guy can, and I'm a psychologist. People probably think that I sit and drink tea all day. No, I'm fucking yelling at you and yelling at Vito, and I don't do that shit. I like sports. I like guy stuff.
I wonder how many guys are laughing right now when I said, you were a pretty good tennis player, right? In high school.
You know what? That's the sport I chose to play that I was good at. And I didn't want to play soccer or baseball. And the schedule was pretty fair.
You love soccer, too.
I love sports.
This isn't getting any better for you.
No. So you got the ego boost. I got the ego knocked down, and that's how we roll, brother.
That's why we're good for each other.
That's
we balance each other out.
Exactly. Man, so cuz the funny part about doing this podcast for 6 years, the one theme and constant is whenever you look at a Lions decision, a lot of times we're going to be like, what the fuck? And the good thing is when you have an organization that gives you so much content, there's a lot to debate. There's a lot to look at. And I understand the situation that happened with Matthew Stafford. Because remember, nothing gets out without people knowing about it, okay? So Mike O'Hara dropping that line that he had a broken back on his own podcast was not done like, haphazardly, because he said when he was called out on it by his co-host, he said, are you supposed to be talking about this? He's like, yeah, it's been reported. And I truly believe the Lions were like,
it was mentioned. He had a hurt back.
And I truly believe the Lions were like, okay, Mike, if you're going to go do this, with the intent of, hey, we want to raise the profile of our quarterback. We want people to get on board because I truly think 52% to 55% of the fans still don't want Stafford around. So this offseason, you're kind of noticing a little bit more of Stafford trying to maybe repair his image. And I think Mike O'Hara went out there and said those things to try and the Lions organization was like, yeah, let's tell everybody he played last year with a broken back. Meanwhile, everyone that looks at that goes, dude, you guys sucked last year. Why the hell are you throwing Matthew Stafford out there? Every decision the Lions make can be criticized, and I truly think that it was dumb to put Matthew Stafford in that position. Great. Nobody has really questioned Matthew Stafford in terms of after the first couple years of his career. He's a gamer. But at the end of the day, all anybody cares about is wins and losses. Nobody cares if he's great in the community. Nobody cares if he's an outstanding citizen. Nobody cares how he is with the media. At the end of the day, does he bring us playoff wins? And can he be viable? You risk your quarterback potentially hurting his career to that degree with broken bones in his back. I mean, one bad hit. Now, best case scenario, he wrote out the season. The Lions won 6 games. He didn't further any injuries, and he's back potentially healthy this year. Worst case scenario, he takes, a wrong hit. He gets crunched by one of those big, huge linemen, and he's out for potentially season. So I think the risk was way too high for that decision, and it's absolutely unacceptable, especially in 2019, where these athletes got to be coddled. You got to, over $20 million investment per season in this guy. He gets hurt in a year where you're 3-6, and then you're 4-8, and there's nothing to play for. Why on earth did you sacrifice Matthew Stafford for 2 wins? Completely unacceptable in my mind, totally frustrating, and I would say this, if it happens again this year, he should say, look, I'm coming out. It's okay. It's 2019. Yeah, some people would call you soft and things like that, but by and large, if you're back on the field and you're healthy, it's much better than potentially being crippled and having a situation linger much longer. Tony Romo went through this. A lot of quarterbacks have issues with their back that can linger. You cannot afford to lose Matthew Stafford. I completely disagree with how this whole thing played out.
Yeah, I think it was a foolish move by the Detroit Lions. When your starting quarterback, Matthew Stafford, has broken bones, not one, not two, multiple broken bones in his back, and you allow him to go out and continue to play, and not even play 1 or 2 games, but to continue to finish the season where he played 4 more games, this guy counts as $30 million against your salary cap. How, in good conscience, can you go ahead and roll him out there and let him be subjected to hit after hit? That old line was in disrepair last year. That was part of the reason he had the broken back, right? How are you going to put him in a spot to let him go out there and continue to get pummeled for 4 more games in a season that was already lost? Like, you weren't going to the playoffs. You weren't going to do anything special. Is this all about having an Iron Man streak? Because if that's what it's about, that's even dumber. It doesn't make any good sense to be able to do this. I totally hold the organization at fault for this too. This is the big problem with the way this team is constructed and the way this team has built. Matt Stafford has nobody he's really accountable to. Just the team. I'm assuming he's accountable to the guys in the locker room because that's what it is. He's the quarterback. But he has nobody who holds him accountable. There's no backup on this team pushing him. There's nobody there where you feel confident enough if Matt Stafford has an injury, you can put him in. So what does Matt Stafford have to do? He's got to go out there and play. Whether he's hurt or not, whether he needs to be pushed or not, he's out there playing. It's a messed up situation. And it does sound like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth here, but it's what it is. That's what this organization has done. You don't have anybody behind Matt Stafford to drive him, to push him, to force him to become a better professional or to become a better quarterback. Matt Stafford, since he's essentially broke into the league, has been a a middle of the pack quarterback, somewhere meandering around 17 to maybe 12. Very rarely have you ever heard Matt Stafford mentioned as a top 10 quarterback. He had one crazy season where he threw the ball everywhere and ended up with over 5,000 yards. On top of all that now, nobody there to push him to be great or to be better. But this organization has brought nobody in to do that. So if he does get hurt, in this case last year, and was the December 2nd game against the Rams is when it's reported that he broke multiple bones in his back. After that, there is nobody that this organization can turn to and say, hey, let's put the backup in, let Matt rest. He's our long-term investment. There's nobody on this roster that they can do that with. Because last year you had Matt Castle. This year you have Tom Savage. Or you have Fails. You have guys who, honestly, are lucky to be water boys, much less a backup quarterback.
Can you state that again?
It doesn't make sense.
What game did he get hurt? Are they saying that potentially he broke his back?
December 2nd was the Los Angeles Rams game.
The Rams game.
Where he got sacked tons of times. I mean, you had Aaron Donald, you had Ndamukong Suh breathing down his neck.
So potentially a month of the season that he had to practice and go out there. Now, you and I...
He played 4 more games after that.
So you were 4-8 at that point. So you recognize, and you and I are talking about the cons. What are the pros? Why would they have done this? Obviously, the player wants to go out there. He wants to try and really rally the troops and be part of the team, and he wants to be out there. And he said, I read that the consecutive game streak, the consecutive start streak that he's on, well over 100 games, means a lot to him. And I know that he took offense to people like us when early in his career questioned him when he was injured and called him China doll and stuff like that. But at the same time, things have changed. This is 2019. You're the guy. You got the contract. It's all set. So I do think that the nature of your career has to be taken into account. It's your coach's first year, the likely scenario of, the staff being exactly the same. What was the gain in doing it, especially knowing that your offensive coordinator didn't survive? You know that potentially things are going to change. It's 4-8. You're hurt. Shut it down. And the other part, if you're Matthew Stafford, you kick your feet up and you go, you know what? If we're 4-8 and we just lose the rest of the way, they're not going to fire the head coach. They're not going to fire everybody. You know what? Let's go out there and just potentially, if I'm not 100%, let me just sit down. Let's lose the rest of the game. Instead of drafting where we did, we can draft third, second. Now I get a better piece. Now I get somebody that could be more impactful. Now I can get somebody that could actually help me win. Maybe we can get one of the top linemen. Maybe we can get an impactful player. No. Instead, what do? You go out there, you win 2 more games. You win the last game of the year. I know that game, basically Green Bay didn't try. But I would say this. The pros are so limited, you might be talking about 2 pros versus 9 cons. And when you make decisions where there's 2 pros and 9 cons, I don't see quality in decision-making on that front.
In that game against Los Angeles Rams, Stafford was sacked 4 times and hit 12. So every time he turned around, he was getting popped. And you're right. There are no pros to this. There are no pros to playing your quarterback who is so beat up that he has multiple bones broken in his back. It makes absolutely no sense. The season was lost. Big deal. What are you going to do? You're going to roll Matt Castle out there? And Matt Castle's going to play absolutely abysmally because he's a horrible backup quarterback?
Jesus Christ.
Okay, cool. What does that mean? That means you're just drafting in a higher spot. That's all that means. It doesn't necessarily hurt you in the long term. Long term, this could have had huge ramifications for this organization. Matt Stafford is the guy who you have hitched your wagon to. He is the player that you have built this team around. He is the guy who, when everybody talks about it, we have to go get him more pieces. We have to go get him more help. Who's him? Him is Matt Stafford. So you have hitched your wagon to this guy, yet you want to roll him out there and let him play 4 more games where he's going to get pounded? I mean, your offensive line was just rotating guys in because everybody was beat up and hurt. Why would you put your quarterback in a situation like that? Because he wants to keep a consecutive game streak going? That's so foolish. This organization repeatedly acts out of self-preservation and puts themselves in bad spots. It makes no sense to start your franchise quarterback, the guy who you pay $30 million a year to every single season, to put him in a spot where he can get even more banged up, even more damaged, and possibly at the very end of the season, when you're not going to the playoffs, when nothing's on the line, because you're not winning anything, to come out even more messed up, even more banged and beat up. It makes absolutely zero sense. It was a 4-8 season. What were you winning? You were already out of the playoffs. At that point in the season, because I remember doing the show with Ryan on the WDFN tailgate. I remember doing that show with him and us just talking about who they could get in the draft. We started looking at draft position at that point because they weren't going to make it to the playoffs. They had no shot. Even if they won out, they still weren't getting in the playoffs. There's no reason to play this guy any further. There was zero. And honestly, I can tell you, because I remember being at that game, that was a really fun game. And I'll tell you why it was a fun game. Because the season was over. We knew the season was over. So when we started interacting with people on Twitter, when we were watching the game, you watch the game differently once the season's over.
Less pressure.
Yes. You can take things, because you're not in it to win it. There's nothing to be gained here, right? The only thing that you're doing is you're hurting your draft stock if you win this game, which is fine. I know you can't go tell guys to tank it. I get it. But the way we approached this game was much more fun for us. I know the players got to go and strap the helmets on and go play, but it was much more fun for us. It was much more lighthearted, and it was just kind of watching how this team can manipulate its draft position. Honestly, at that point, I think they were second, maybe third at the very, very worst when it comes to draft position. I mean, there was a point in the season where they had the number 1 overall pick, and this team ended up blowing that as the season went on, winning 2 meaningless games, but you put your quarterback in a weird spot where this guy's got to man up, he's got to strap the helmet on, and he's got to go out there and give it his all every single game. And if you got broken bones in your back, why? Why would you do that? It doesn't make any sense. You don't have to be a superhero. Matt Stafford, this is the one thing you can say about the guy. He's a gamer, and he's tough. He's not a China doll, all right? He's tough. Tough as nails, whether you like him or not, whether you like his contract or not. The one thing you can't say about Matt Stafford is that he's a wuss, because he isn't. He's strong as hell. He's tough as nails. All that being said, there's no reason to play your quarterback when he's got a beat-up back. It just doesn't make sense.
The interesting part was, what was your sense of the squad when you went down to the locker room? Is it one where did you sense a vibe of like, okay, we're just trying to get through the season? Or, I know a couple of athletes talked to you about building a culture and really trying to establish good play and really trying to go out there and give a sense that they're trying to win every game. But when you're 4-8, the season's over. I know, people were trying to set forth leadership and really trying to change the culture. But the tough part with the Lions is eventually everybody becomes lionized. And when you become lionized, it means that you recognize that, okay, we're just fighting an uphill battle. And eventually everybody realizes with that organization that, man, we're trying our absolute best, but for whatever reason, we're just not getting over. And it's super tough at 4-8. Did you get a sense of that? Or did you get a sense of like, we're playing the Rams, we're playing a tough team. Yeah, we're not on their level, but no matter what, we're just looking for small wins to move this along.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
It was a lot of that. The one guy who I think kind of kept it together in that locker room was Ricky Jean-Francois.
Yep.
He was, anytime you needed to talk to him, he was so gregarious with everything that he would say to you, and the way he would communicate with you was awesome. He let you in on really what was going on in that locker room, which I thought was great, and I appreciated it. He wouldn't come out and just say it. You kind of had to read between the lines.
Yep.
It was a lot. It was small victories. It was, we're laying the foundation. So what can we build on? Okay, cool. That's great. But if your quarterback's not there next year because he becomes Tony Romo, what do you have to build on? Because you don't have anybody else. And again, this goes back to the organization. You've not insulated this team or protected this team as far as a depth standpoint with quarterbacks. Like, you don't have anybody. You've got nobody good. I mean, Jake Rudock looked like he was going to be decent, right? I mean, he looked like he was going to be an all right backup. Right. I mean, you're not looking for the next. You're not looking for the next Jimmy G, right? You just want somebody. If Matt Stafford gets banged up, you could slot him in and he could play. Jake Rudock looked like that for one season. That second season was kind of a miss, and then they cut him his third season. And then after that, it's just been guys like Matt Castle's not good, and I don't know what anybody expects from Tom Savage, but hey guys, he's not good.
And I was surprised. The biggest complaint that people will levy against the website prideofdetroit.com is that they're pro Lions, things like that. Obviously, when you call yourself Pride of Detroit, it lends people to kind of criticize you. But they put out a great article, and they said, look, the 2017 draft is pretty much a nightmare if you want to go back and visit it. Go back and look at who was drafted. 4 of the 9 draft picks are not even with the Lions.
Yeah.
And you can't sustain success if you're not drafting at a high level. And that's the core issue, is that there needs to be more talent with the Lions, and there needs to be a culture change. Eventually speaking, I do think Patricia will maybe potentially get there where the culture's changed, where, hey, we're a defensive team, we're a no-nonsense team, but will they have enough talent? Will they hit on enough people? I mean, we're going to talk about this right now. You draft a guy, a tight end, Michael Roberts, and that move right there, if we just wanted to do a deep dive onto that, potentially causes massive ramifications now. Because of the fact that you whiffed on Michael Roberts, you have to, try and trade him, right? So what happens in 2019, you use your first round pick, the 8th pick, to take a tight end. All right, you could have actually selected a tight end that now plays in San Francisco named Kittles, who's a G. He's an OG. He's a guy that you saw that, wow, he can catch, he can run, he can do things. You could have had him. Why is he not a Detroit Lion? So that draft pick right there is an epic fail. And you realize, wow, okay, so you recognize quickly after 2 or 3 seasons, Michael Roberts is not the guy. You draft his replacement. You try and trade him to at least acquire something, is what everybody told me. Because I'm like, seriously, is the only number that picks up for Bob Quinn the New England Patriots? That's the only number that picks up. Yeah, Bob, what up? Oh, you want to practice? Sure. Oh, you want to be a trade partner? Sure. What must Bob Quinn be thinking when he proposes a trade for one of his guys and New England Patriots say, sure? What must be everyone in Detroit? Their reaction's like, no, this automatically means Roberts is going to catch touchdowns. And then you go the next day, you go, okay, we get a 7th rounder, conditional pick, whatever. That's what we get. This is what happens. This is what the Lions do. And then the trade gets rejected because he can't pass a physical and he has to come back. And then the Lions are like, well, we don't really want him. It's pretty obvious, so we cut him. So who picks him up? The Green Bay Packers. So not only do we not get a pick for him, you drafted a tight end. Now you're forced to draft another one in 2019 because of it. The whole Michael Roberts ordeal, in a nutshell, if you just shine a microscope on it, is the reason the Lions are in the position that they're in, is that you had a guy that you targeted that you thought could be productive. He totally isn't. You try to get rid of him to at least add a pick, and that doesn't work out. And then he goes on and moves on to a divisional rival. It's, in a nutshell, that's the fucking Detroit Lions for you.
Yeah, it really is. And
you can't help but laugh.
You're right. With like George Kittle is the guy, right? If you're looking back at the draft, George Kittle is the guy. He's the Pro Bowl player who came after Michael Roberts, and you could have had him, but you missed. You swung and you missed. And there are other guys that you could have picked up, but this is what the Detroit Lions do. This is what it is. And it's so frustrating.
Yes.
Because, like you said, you just shine a microscope on that. That in a microcosm has been what the Detroit Lions are and has been Bob Quinn's tenure as general manager. Deep down, I think Bob Quinn, Matt Patricia, I think they'll figure it out. The thing is, do you have enough time to figure it out? I mean, going into this season right now, there's talks that Patricia's on the hot seat.
Yeah, right.
Do you know what I'm saying? And this is year 2 for him. And I don't know about you, but I'm a firm believer that you need to give a head coach at least 3 years. But this is year 2 for him, and there's already talks and speculation that he's on the hot seat. And I don't know how you feel about it, but if Bob Quinn goes or if Matt Patricia goes, I think they're one and the same. I think they both go. So now you're possibly talking about a regime change underneath Bob Quinn. It's been, 4 years now? So this will be Matt Patricia's 2nd year. So you're going to be blowing everything back up if they do get blown out, and then you got to start all over again.
This season after 2019 could be very critical to the future of the Detroit Lions. I would say if you're a Lions fan and you're hopeful and you really want to see some momentum going forward, this year I would panic. If it doesn't happen, you're potentially looking at a complete overhaul. If it doesn't go right, if the Lions only get 6-7 wins again this year, it doesn't go right. If the offense is stagnant, if the fans are boisterous, or heaven forbid, the line is so terrible and not consistent enough that Stafford does get hurt and gone for an entire year. If that happens, Stafford potentially could be gone. Head coach, general manager, you could be looking at a complete overhaul again, in which sets you back another 5 years because a miracle worker couldn't come in here and change the fortunes of the Detroit Lions. So this is a big year. They have to show progress. Even if it's just 8-8 and you're knocking on the door, you can't have less than 7 wins. I think that's the market. You can't have anything less than 7. You're now opening the door for a lot of noise to be talked about regarding the entire franchise.
So that's where you put the cutoff, is that 7 wins.
Yeah.
That's so weird to me. For me, you have to win at least 8, but I want 10.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, for success. But I'm saying is you can make an argument if you're the Lions. Look, we got a little bit better. There's situations that have happened that we want to continue to build. We're just now in year 2 of Patricia. Give us time. When coaches get time, you can sell it. If you get 6 wins, 5 wins, nobody's going to listen. They're just going to be like, okay, we're done. We're going to cancel season tickets. We're not going to go out there. You can sell 7, in my opinion, is the answer I would give. You really sell. The best case scenario is if you don't make the playoffs, you're like 9-7, and the rest of the teams in the division have good years. You can sell that,
right?
And that's what it is for the Lions. It's what can we sell? How can we keep this going? How can we keep all the positive support and vibe with what's going on? Now, I do want to bring this up. One last topic regarding the Lions. The fascinating part about podcasting and interviews and things like that is now athletes are using podcasts as a way to get their message out. Did you hear Darius Slay on a podcast? I don't know if you got a chance to realize he went on a podcast, and the podcast was great. They went on and they said, they asked, okay, is there a chance that you're going to miss training camp? And he said, we'll see about that. So he kind of opened the door to speculation that, hey, I'm not coming to training camp. And I was like, wow, Darius Slay using the media to get his message across via a podcast nonetheless. And then what? The biggest news of the week was from the Detroit Lions podcast. So it's just fascinating that this medium is moving towards being acceptable. Many people are doing it. You're doing more of them. I love it. I'm like, Darius Slay went on a podcast. I'm like, all right, Vito, step up your game. Let's get the other one. Let's get Snacks. Let's get Damian Harrison on here. He's like, yeah, I got his number, but probably not going to answer us. I'm like, yeah, probably not going to answer right away, but it's still good. If it's not us, it's somebody else. It's so good how people are, I see in articles, oh, this podcast is being referenced. Podcasts are doing a lot of great things, but Darius Slay, I think there's above 70% chance he ain't at training camp.
He wants.
He's fighting this.
He wants the ability to opt out of contracts too.
Yeah,
that's like new news.
Yeah. What?
So it's weird. He's very upset with his contract right now, which I don't really understand. He's been very boisterous. Excuse me. He's been very boisterous, while Snacks not so much. I don't understand what he's so upset about. He just signed a deal. It's not like he's like overwhelmingly underpaid. And honestly, after coming off of last season, I don't get where he's coming from. How do you have any ground to sit there and complain about your contract when you didn't perform greatly last year at all? Like it was a very average year. Your first 8 games sucked. Your last 8 games were better, but you weren't heads or tails above anybody. So what makes you think that you deserve to be the highest paid cornerback in the league? I just don't get it. And look, I love Darius Slay. I do. I think he's incredible. I think he's fun. I think he's great to talk to. I think he's a leader in that locker room. I think he is a guy that you build a team around. But that being said, dude, you just signed an extension 2 years ago. If you didn't like that extension then, I don't know what to tell you.
Well,
like, you didn't have to sign it.
Okay, I tend to agree with what you're saying if it's just the player. Okay, but remember, there's influences, and there's influences of those that want to get paid.
I totally get it.
I see this potentially as the agent going, yo, bro, you're the man. Darius, you're the guy. You're in Detroit. You're probably not going to win anything. Look, they got to pay you for the misery. They got to pay you, baby. And I think the agent has a big say in both of these things where they go, look, you signed me up. My job, Darius, I'm going to get you that money. I don't care about the media. I don't care what Adam and John think. I don't care about anything. I'm going to get you that paper. I'm going to get it for you. Come hell or high water, you sit out. I think that when you get enough people to rile you up, I could probably rile Darius Slay up to the point where he thinks he should be the top paid guy in the world.
Right. And I understand that.
He has to be influenced. He has to be.
The thing about it, and I think this is dangerous, right? So you're listening to your agent, which you should. He's your agent. He has your best interest at heart.
Most money.
And I'm using
the highest potential money you can get.
So I get that, right? But I think it's very, very dangerous. He just signed an extension 2 years ago. And I think what his agent is trying to do is he's trying to utilize both Snacks, contract and Darius Slay's contract to help leverage for each other, which if they were on different teams, cool, you can do that. But they're on the same team. So how are you going to try to leverage more money for one player and more money for another player? It doesn't necessarily make sense to me, especially because they're two different positions and they're both in weird spots where the reason Snacks was traded for was because his cap hit was so friendly. It was a very friendly. It was an organizational. It was a friendly contract for the organization. Whereas Slay signed an extension 2 years ago, and he's still relatively highly paid. I think he's like the 11th highest paid cornerback. With his year-to-year salary. I'm not sure what the big stink or the hoopla is here. And Snacks, if you go back and you look at what Snacks did, Snacks only played half a season here. So you have a cornerback who played a good half season last year, and you have a defensive tackle who only played half a season here. What are you trying to leverage here? I don't think you have any ground to stand on. And I think it's very, very dangerous because one of these guys will probably be extended. The other one, probably not. So that means bitter and hard feelings for somebody. So I think in the end, the real loser is probably going to be Detroit. But at the same point, both these players are losing money every single day, not showing up to OTAs and training camp. And both these players, I think in the long run, do damage to themselves, especially when it comes to this contract negotiation. I don't know how this gets worked out. I don't know how this ends. But I'm counting on both of them at this point missing training camp and possibly missing some of preseason, honestly. And I think what ends up happening is there are rules set in place that when they miss certain preseason weeks and preseason games, they are fined and penalized heavily. I think that's what spurs them to come back. So I'm thinking by the time Game 3 rolls around, that's when they come back. And it'll probably be both of them. I don't think we miss actual game time. But I this is so messy, and I think it's so stupid right now. Like I don't think either one of them have a ton of leverage because of the team that they're on and the spots that they're in with their contracts. It just doesn't make any sense to me. 1 year, I get it. 2 years, I don't. Especially when one of these guys just signed a contract and one of these guys was traded for because of his contract. Doesn't make sense to me. I don't know.
All right, time for our first time out. Second half of the podcast, we got a debate. Who has the worst job? Is it Ed Stefanski with the Pistons or is it Avila with the Detroit Tigers? Both organizations going through massive struggles. Both organizations have their head guys talking to us, and we got to break down what they're telling us because Adam and I can't be happy about it. Stay with us. You're listening to Doc and Jock on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Because the reason why we're able to keep the lights on and the studio mics hot here in Sterling Heights, the reason why world-class trainers call us up, the reason why they come visit Vito and I is because of the fact that we got great content and we got great sponsors. And I want to show love to two of them, the Motor City Pawnbrokers and the Flick application. The Motor City Pawnbrokers are the one-stop pawn shop when you're in need of short-term cash or are looking for quality brand name new and pre-owned merchandise with locations in Detroit, Ferndale, Roseville, and Warren. Their mission is to deliver exceptional value. For all information, for all the great deals at the Motor City Pawnbrokers, go online and visit MotorCityPawnbrokers.com. And if you happen to go into one of the locations, tell them the Detroit Sports Podcast sent you. Now, cuz, if you happen to go over to the Flick application and you check out the great debates, a lot of great things are happening. I got the message from the developers. Boom. Now we can put up our own podcast right there on the main page. And I just love working with the guys over there at Flick. On Father's Day, I was over there talking to Brian. I'm like, Brian, check this out. If you're bored, all you got to do is go on this application. We can get in there and debate. And he's like, dude, I'm going to set it up. I'm going to tell the neighbors. He signed up just like that. And I was telling him, see, look how easy it is. I just pushed a button and boom, he joined up and he got in there right away. He got in the mix and was talking about some of the NBA free agents. And the reason why Flick works so great is it allows us to take the conversation via a chat application and talk and extend conversations, tell everybody about a podcast. Look, we're the Detroit Sports Podcast. We are all about extending the brand and helping people out. So if you got a podcast, go and share your link. Tell everybody. We're growing a group. And just like that, we picked up new followers last week with the new update of allowing us to put our podcast directly in the group there. So the Flick application is great. We have group topics. You can create your own topic. If you have a thought about the NBA, you're in control of it. Obviously, Doc and Jock are the administrators. We're going to oversee everything. But to join the group is so easy. All you got to do is go online via our social media platform, find the invitation link, click on it, and within minutes, you're part of the action. And that's all everybody wants to be, is part of the action. Adam and I are there. Great wrestling content. Great talk about the Pistons, Lions. We're going to now debate Avila versus Ed Stefanski. We're going to take that conversation and extend it and talk about it via Flick. So go to flickapp.com, join the group, and if you're already a member and you want to get in, all you got to do is press the little plus sign and type in all small letters DSP, and you're in the mix. We want to thank the great sponsors that make this broadcast possible. Definitely support the Motor City Pawnbrokers and Flick Chat. Because it's disheartening. Obviously, from time to time, the general managers will come out and they'll start talking about what's going on. And it seems like when Avila or Ed Stefanski talk to the media, a lot of fans just get more upset. I think they should probably take the bunker mentality. Ed Stefanski spoke earlier last week regarding the Pistons, and he actually used the phrase Big Three. And I think everybody that heard that was like, no, we don't have a Big Three. We got a maybe one. And that's it. That's everybody.
A maybe one.
Because potentially when you need him, he's going to be hurt. So everybody's still talking about trading Andre, trading Reggie, trading Blake Griffin. Hey, hell, make an offer to New Orleans. They got a plethora of picks. Make some moves. Ed Stefanski's like, no, we're going to still continue to potentially roll with what we got. And when he spoke, I just think everybody took the stance that, man, more of the same. We're just going to be a franchise that just gets to the playoffs, and that's the ceiling. So disheartened there. Avila, tough job now because of the fact that more players are chirping the way he handled Nick Castellanos. He potentially backed himself in a corner. We talked about it last year in terms of the fact that he came out and spoke too much about it, and he told everybody there was no market for him. So now you're trying to get rid of him. Nick C's sitting there chirping on his chair. He's like, they told me to do this, and I flat out said no. And you can't have that. You can't put that out in the media. And that's a direct result of what's going on. The losing's getting to everybody. So the Tigers, the Pistons, their stock is way down. Thankfully, Steve Yzerman, when he stands there, it's like the beacon of lights talking. Oh, happens when he talks. And he's like, hey, whoever he drafts June 21st, we're all happy because if Steve Yzerman anoints him, he's going to be a winner. But the other two, Avila, Ed Stefanski, they got tough jobs. And I was just thinking, who the hell has it worse? Because the Tigers started their rebuild, but you're not really seeing signs of guys that you're like, I want him. Ed Stefanski, they're not even saying they're rebuilding, and they're rolling with guys. In essence, they're rolling with guys nobody wants.
Yep.
I mean, if you said, we traded Andre Drummond, everyone applauds. They're not even going to care who we got back. Everyone, majority, outside of a couple, vocal minority that really love the Pistons, Ed Stefanski's got the toughest job because of the fact there's no hype, there's no hope. Everybody's upset, and it's just a tough spot. But who's got it worse, Avila or Ed Stefanski? Who's got the tougher job of trying to bring this back? Because they're both in the negative, and they're trying really hard. But for me, I think it's Ed Stefanski because of the fact they're in denial. How do you go out there and try to roll with those three? I would say, I'm talking to the press, and they're asking me, what's the viability of trading for or letting go of Blake Griffin? I'm like, you know what? We're going to scour the landscape come hell or high water. We're going to make this team better. If it includes trading Blake, Andre, Reggie, we're going to trade everybody. We want to make this team the best possible. We got to get cap friendly, but we want to make a statement and do what we can. Dude, Blake Griffin's a pro. He's not going to get butthurt. He's got millions of dollars guaranteed coming to him. It just doesn't matter. Does it come from Detroit, L.A.? Does it come from Houston? He's not going to care. And at the very least, if you hurt his feelings, so be it. I don't care. I don't want to hype up guys that nobody wants. I look at that press conference and I'm like, man, just lie to us. Just tell us, look, we saw what we did. We got our asses handed to us from Milwaukee. We got to step it up big time. And what are they talking about? We got to draft 15th. We got to make sure it's not a miss. Yeah, well, most people don't care who you're drafting. They don't. They just want to say, potentially the news that was exciting to people was Andre could opt out. Please, can we sign a petition for Andre to opt out? Would make a lot of people happy. But I think Ed Stefanski's got the tougher job. Avila's got a couple notes that he can say with the number one pick. They're going to suck this year. They're going to have a high draft pick. He's got a couple legs to stand on by saying, just wait. Pistons fans? Dude, nobody's showing up. So they had to even change the seats. The seats aren't red anymore at Little Caesars. Are all black seats because no one's going to the Wings and Pistons games. Nobody's going. Nobody cares.
Because it's a funeral.
It's a funeral. It's tough. So Ed Stefanski, I think, has it much worse because he's got to try and sell people on this shit. I don't even think Ed Stefanski believes that they're going anywhere for 2-3 years. He's like, I got to try and sell this shit as best I can.
So Doc is telling you that he wants Ed Stefanski to be like the girl that he paid last night. Just tell me you love me.
Just tell me you want it,
Tell me you love me as I'm giving it to you. That's what you want. It's Avila all day long.
Really?
It's Avila all day long. Now listen, all right? This is a team that has basically said, we're not spending any money. We're not. So what you have as a roster is what you have to contend with, all right? So he can't spend any money. He has to do everything through the draft. Now, in baseball, draft picks are very hit or miss. It's not like in basketball where you basically know it's almost a surefire thing. If you get a top 5 draft pick, you're going to be able to pick some talent, all right? And if you do enough scouting and you're able to see what you're taking, you can usually fit a guy into your system if you know what kind of system you're going to run. Baseball's totally different. There are no guarantees. Absolutely no guarantees. It's very rare that guys, number 1 overall picks ever fully pan out. And you're seeing it with a guy like Casey Mize right now where he's your top pitching prospect. He's your number 1 guy. He is the guy that every Detroit Lion or every Detroit Tigers fans has their hopes pinned on. Like, we need Casey Mize to essentially be Justin Verlander number 2. And he just went down with some shoulder inflammation. I'm using finger quotes again. Shoulder inflammation. You've seen the video. I've seen the video. He threw the ball. Didn't look real good. Velocity essentially went from 95 to 85. That's a huge dip. That's a huge dip. This could be career threatening, or it could just be a minor blip on the radar. This is the thing with baseball players. You never really know. On top of that, guys get hurt all the time. Essentially, look at the Detroit Tigers lineup right now. It's so banged up. You've got guys coming up, and you've got guys rolling through this team that you're like, who's this guy? And what does he do? What did he do down in the minors? And you're trying to scratch your head and figure it out, and you're going to look at Mudhen stats, trying to see what the hell this guy just did last week in AAA, and you're like, that does not look good. Not look good at all. On top of all that, you have a malcontent as your star player in Miguel Cabrera. Earlier this year, Miguel Cabrera threw everybody underneath the bus who was hitting behind him or in front of him or hitting anywhere near him. Mind you, he wasn't hitting the ball anywhere. And then you have another malcontent out in right field in Nick Castellanos, who Avila at a certain point last year shot himself in the foot. This is a guy who's just a little bit too honest. I don't have a market for Nick Castellanos. Nobody wants him. Cool, bro. Should never, ever have said that. You're an idiot. So now you've got 2 malcontents. One of those malcontents is making $1 bajillion, and he's on the books for, at least another 2, maybe 3 years. So that's messy. On top of that, you're not going to be able to probably trade away Nick Castellanos, or if you do, you're not going to get what his worth is. It's going to be similar to the J.D. Martinez trade, where you basically got a used jockstrap and some old towels and 3 balls that have been chewed on by a dog next door. So if you ask me, it's Avila, because he's got to essentially put a roster together almost from scratch. Mind you, he can't pay any money to go get any free agents. He's got bad contracts on the books in Cabrera and Jordan Zimmerman, amongst others. On top of all of that, there's no guarantee in baseball what points a light to an actual prospect panning out. It's a real hit or miss thing. It's just you kind of roll the dice and you hope that you don't get snake eyes.
But there's a chance to hit. There's a lot of pitchers. There's a lot of pieces that you could say, okay, if they do hit, there's going to be an opportunity to have success.
But how many of those guys
3 of them
pan out to be
at least 2 or 3,
a top 10 pitcher in the league, or even say a top 25 pitcher in the league? It doesn't happen often enough, is what I'm saying. Because you've got teams in the league, and some of these teams don't even have a number 1 ace on their roster. And right now, the Tigers are one of those teams. Do you know what I'm saying? And you're hoping Casey Mize isn't done. But a 10-mile-an-hour dip, that's serious. That could be something much more than just shoulder inflammation. You've had an inflamed shoulder. I've had an inflamed shoulder. And you know what? We're not star athletes out there, but you know what? You still show up and you do your job. You mean to tell me that this dude has shoulder inflammation and that's the cause for a 10-mile-an-hour dip in his fastball? I don't think so.
Some early reaction to the question, who has the tougher job to make their team better? The Grind Line podcast says, the question should be actually, who should be out of a job?
Yeah, I was going to ask you, which one of these guys do you think sees the rebuild all the way through? Is it Ed Stefanski or is it Avila?
I think both. I don't think that
you think both do?
Yeah, some people...
okay, if you have to pick one.
Yeah,
all right, you have to pick one.
I say Avila will be gone.
Yeah, I think Avila too. I think Ed Stefanski sees this through.
I think he does.
I think he sees the fruits of the labor before Avila does. I think you're spot on. I think we're in lockstep there.
Darren Weber says, probably even, but Avila's seat is much hotter than Stefanski's. Joe Boo, great wrestling fan, gets in. Easily Avila, because when he took over, the cupboard was bare. So he thinks that Avila's got
cupboard.
Yeah, so he's got a tougher job to actually replenish everything. See, my opinion is that Ed Stefanski's got the tougher job because of the fact that also, I do think that Avila realizes that the struggle is going to be with the dollars, but once the dollars are there, once the cupboard opens, then you have a potential to, get some guys to fill in when you start getting the pitchers up and you start retooling. Ed Stefanski, he's got a situation where the owner's like, I love Andre.
Yeah.
I love Blake Griffin. And he's like, hey, come hell or high water, I don't want those guys moved. I mean, when you hear reports that Andre was potentially moved by Stan Van Gundy, who did something right by making that decision, and then you say, okay, let's make that move. And he's like, hell no. You give a max contract to Andre Drummond is on a level of crazy. Then you make a trade for a veteran who is going to be 30 years old when, it's going to be the downside of his career. And then you're tasked with surrounding him with talent with no money. That job is unbelievable. The constraints are, I think, twice as much for the Pistons as they are for the Tigers. The Tigers just got to suck now, and everyone's like, okay, they suck. Just try to play better defensively and not to throw the ball all over the place. The Pistons are not even at the point where they can even get money to make a move.
You know what's messed up? I think we both agree, right? We both think Ed Stefanski will see the rebuild through, right? He'll be the one who'll probably be more successful.
But it won't work. It's not going to work.
But I think we both also agree that Tom Gores, out of both Chris Ilitch and Tom Gores, is the worst owner because he's the most meddling. That's really weird, right? So you have a general manager who's allowed to essentially do his job, but we both feel that he's not going to be able to see the rebuild all the way through its completion. Whereas you have Tom Gores who meddles and kind of messes everything up for you, and basically you have a nice, neat, tidy, clean room, and everything's moving right along, and then the Tasmanian Devil comes in. That's Tom Gores. He's drunk off of gin and tonics and throwing T-shirts at Piston games, and he's going to essentially screw everything up and crap the bed for Ed Stefanski. But we both feel that Stefanski will be able to navigate that and, in the end, see much more completion to his rebuild. That's really weird. Like let that sink in, right? We both think that we both have different opinions on who has a tougher job, but we both believe that one of these general managers in Avila will be broomed out while he has a general manager or while he has an owner who allows him to do his job. Whereas Ed Stefanski has a meddling owner and probably has might have a tougher road to hoe there by having a general manager that he has to navigate, but will probably get the job done quicker. That's messed up. Like the
dynamics are messed up.
It's so screwed up. Just like me talking about it gets my brain just all whirly-turby. Yeah. That's crazy, man. That's nuts.
It's too much. Way too much. And Ed Stefanski is working under a premise that is super tough where you say to yourself, okay, I got two guys that just aren't going to work together. I just think that, especially now, one of the big decisions is going to be made is, please, if Kawhi Leonard leaves, just don't stay in the East. Just go out to the West. Go to the Clippers. Go to the Lakers. To stay away from us. But you still got to contend with the Celtics who are going to rebuild and retool, and you still got to contend with, Boston, Toronto, and Milwaukee, who's going to be super hungry. So nobody believes that the rebuild is going to end up with too much. So Ed Stefanski, in my mind, has got the tougher job. But now, what's disappointing is, right as soon as Toronto wins it, and congrats to them, they took advantage, and unfortunate for the Warriors, losing Klay Thompson, losing Kevin Durant. That was a big, huge cluster, and like you said, and like I tweeted, I just think that Toronto gets credit, but there'll still be an asterisk. You still have to say that Golden State got hurt. You have to say it. But as soon as the ink dried and they were celebrating...
Do you put an asterisk with the 2004 Pistons? with their win over the Lakers basically imploded from the inside out.
No, but they're still healthy.
You had beef with Shaq and Kobe, and then you had Karl Malone.
They still were there.
Not necessarily being what Karl Malone used to be. I mean, you had aging veterans on that Lakers team that kind of brought them down.
The Pistons played a brand of basketball that was not going to be denied, so I don't think that. But many people, if you ask them, could the Warriors have defeated Toronto? Of course, with everybody healthy, yeah, no doubt about it. You saw it. The first quarter when Kevin Durant came back, boom, they looked smooth. They looked rejuvenated. They looked like the better team. So I would have taken that all day, and I think that people will debate that the Warriors were hurt, but they'll still give credit to Kawhi Leonard and the Toronto Raptors. All credit to them. But the ink didn't even dry, and then boom, the massive trade took place. We were talking about it, a few months ago. Man, AD didn't get traded. How the hell did this happen? The situation got leaked, and caused a lot of problems for the Lakers. Magic left, and their dynamics were exposed a little bit of how toxic it is. But then, boom, as soon as the Toronto Raptors win, they announce a mega trade, and I'm like, damn, Woj bomb for the ages.
Mm-hmm.
What? AD goes to the Lakers, and I think the factor that everybody's in love with is the fact that the Pelicans got 3 first-round picks, two first-round picks this year, the first and the fourth. How impressive is that? And then you're going to get Zion Williamson, the 4th pick, and then you're going to have years where you get 2 first-round picks. That's going to be amazing. You're going to get 3 first-rounders. The players that they got are okay. Lonzo and Ingram can fit in, but you realize they didn't get Kuzma. They didn't have to trade away a piece, and it's going to be LeBron, AD, and Kuzma, and you fill in the rest. Wow. You think that trade was good for the NBA, or what was your reaction to a massive move that instantly puts the Lakers back on the map where there's some talks about playoffs and winning the West year 1?
I think it was a great trade for the NBA, and I think it was great because of what it does for the Pelicans. Now, there's a lot of pressure on the Pelicans in that front office to get these picks right. But what you did was you got some young pieces.
Set up.
Yeah, you got some young pieces in return, all right, that can get up and down the floor. Your head coach is going to likes to run up and down the floor. So you've got guys who fit that system. On top of that, you've got draft picks for days. And there's no guarantee. You could take Lonzo Ball and spin him off for another either draft pick or for a different commodity to come back and return. Or you could pair one of these draft picks that you have. You've got a bajillion of them at this point. You just got to reach in the basket and pull one out, attach it to Lonzo Ball's chest, and say, here, we're going to give you this. Give me this in return. And you can get a piece that's going to function and play for you now instantly.
You got trade chips.
Yes.
A pick, you can then turn around. You got 3 of them. Just take one and get an established vet. Bada boom, baby. You got yourself a team.
On top of that, right, you're going to go out and you're going to probably, I don't even think it's probably, you're going to draft the most impactful player in this draft in Zion Williamson, right? So you've got an explosive player there to pair with other guys who are athletic, can get up and down the court, and it's not just done after that first pick. You've got a 4th, If you really wanted to, if somebody finds something that they really, really want that high up, let's just say the Detroit Pistons, say they want to trade up to go get something. I don't know what. I don't know, maybe a point guard might be good. Just saying. You can then trade back and acquire either more picks or, again, another guy who's going to be able to step in and help you out this season. So I think there's a ton of flexibility with what the Pelicans have. I thought it was crazy. 3 first-round picks and players? Nuts. Absolutely nuts. And you don't lose your first-round pick? Holy cow. You just gave up a player who's basically going to walk on you next year. I thought it was great. I think this trade works out great for both teams, but I think it puts the Pelicans in a really interesting spot. You got to hit. You got to hit on a couple of these draft picks, but I think you're in a primo spot for, you want to call it a rebuild? I'm going to call it a retool on the fly. I think it's great for the NBA. NBA's offseason's absolutely insane. Absolutely not. Mike Conley just got dealt to the Utah Jazz. Absolutely bonkers right now.
The talk of CP3 maybe even being looked at by the Detroit Pistons.
No,
kind of wild.
No. Do you want CP3 here?
No.
Hell no. Look, CP3 hasn't been able to make it through a NBA playoffs in the last 2 or 3 years. Every time the game gets a little bit tight, guess what his hamstring does? It gets a little bit tight and snaps like a rubber band.
Because he's going to be making the final 2 years of his deal, he'll be making over $40 million for CP3. Get the hell out of here. No, I'm glad Mike Conley's not coming here.
The only way I trade for CP3 is if somebody takes Andre Drummond.
Yeah.
You take Andre, but then you know what? You got Blake and CP3 back again, and that didn't work last time in LA. So what are we doing?
We don't want to do that. Great podcast recording. I appreciate having this conversation. Feel better about the Lions. Feel better just letting loose on the Pistons and Tigers, who both have a tough time. Yeah, our focus should be on the Red Wings and where they're going to draft. Hopefully, both the Pistons and Red Wings do get guys that are going to be contributors, and that at least we can say, okay, they're going to be guys that we like. They're going to be guys that are going to contribute, come in right away, help us out, and get into the system and make some things happen. Look for Steve Yzerman to do some things. I think that Stevie knows what's up, and I think he's going to make moves where you go, oh, okay, you know what? Maybe not the flashy guy, but a guy that can come in and grind it out and be a guy that can fit in. And I think Steve Yzerman is the guy with the most respect at this point in time. Mm-hmm. You can follow Adam on Twitter at Adam RSTROZ. Check out his work at WDFN.iHeart.com. You can follow the network at Detroit Podcast. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If anything that you agree with, disagree with, feel free, shoot off a tweet. We read everything. And if you want to leave us a voicemail, 248-579-8686. Thanks, everybody. We'll see everybody next time.
This was locker room talk.
Second dick.
Sorry, Detroit. Didn't quite work out.
And all I can say is Detroit Sports Podcast scores.
I hear voices in my head. They counsel me. They understand. They talk to me. They talk to me. They tell me things that I will do. They show me things not to.